FCS scheduling could be in line for a major change. And if that change happens, there will be a positive and negative impact on MEAC and SWAC schools. Let's paint the entire picture so we know what to expect. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU, your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can go to FanDuel and make $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You just have to go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Grambling's newest transfer from LSU. And though the school he's coming from will make your eyes go, whoa, I'm looking at his leadership more than I'm looking at what he can do on the field. In segment 2, Shannon Harris is supposed to be a part of Tennessee State. I'm just not necessarily sure that he's going to join the staff in 2025 because I believe he will be offered the DC Defenders head coaching position. But let's kick this off with something that is also a little bit more in the future. It's more so in 2026 opposed to 2025. But that's this idea that the FCS scheduling could have a major overhaul going into the 2026 season. Now, they're going to vote on it this offseason. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter in 2025. 2026 is the year that all of this goes into place. Let me break it down because I think we need to first establish what is the scenario around the idea of FCS schools having a growing schedule. Right now, FCS schools can play 11 games. I want to read to you exactly, I want to read to you exactly what is said on the NCAA website so that we know what is the rules currently. Current legislation permits 12 regular season contests in years where there are 14 Saturdays from the first permissible playing day through the last permissible playing day in November. That exists in 2024, 2025. In all other years, only 11 regular season contests are permitted. This recommendation would standardize the start date of the FCS as the Thursday 13 weeks before the FCS championship bracket is released, which is the Saturday before Thanksgiving. So if the proposed change is adopted in 2026, FCS teams could begin competing on Thursday, August 27th. All right, so now this is important. Ain't no more week 0. There's no more week 0. And I want to start off with the negative side of this because I think the negative is it's way more realistic. We see the negative aspect of this opposed to the positive. So I want to start off with what the negative is. If this is adopted, the idea of the MEAC-SWAC challenge being this special week 0 game when barely any other games are on, that goes away. Do you still get the TV rights? Yeah, you still get some of the stance that places you above. I still believe that the MEAC-SWAC challenge will be placed on a pedestal, but the pedestal is not as high if this rule or this proposal gets approved. So as it stands right now, everybody else is going to start playing week 1. You're going to have the MEAC-SWAC challenge. You're going to have maybe 2-3 other games that are going to be on in week 0. And because there's not a lot of games, there's not a lot of competition. Now, this is kind of similar to the conversation we had around the Celebration Bowl. You have less competition, so you're going to get more views. That's just how it goes. Imagine if Locked On HBCU was the only show that covered HBCU athletics. Now, if you ask me, it's the premier show. It's the place that you should be. I mean, I could be biased about it. I could not be. I don't know why somebody would say I'm biased, but to me, Locked On HBCU is the number one place to go. I would even call it the daily number one, or it's going to be the one-stop shop. Here I am messing up my own catchphrase trying to be funny. But here's the thing. In all seriousness, if Locked On HBCU was the only show on YouTube that covered HBCU athletics, then everybody would be running to the show because it's the only place you could be. Now, I think it's beautiful that that isn't the case. Of course, it would be beneficial to me if this was the only place you could go. But I think it's beautiful that you can go to a multitude of other places. I think it's beautiful that you can go talk to somebody about Alcorn or Southern. I think it's beautiful that you can get Coach's Corner, that you can get multiple interviews there if you want to go that route. I think it's beautiful that you can go get Jackson State coverage. I think that it's dope. You can get all of these schools. HBCU Nightly is still one of my favorite programs. I know technically we're competition, but at the end of the day, Josh, that's my guy. So I think that it's beautiful that you have all of these different components. I don't necessarily think that the HBCUs that are involved in the MEAC-SWAC challenge are looking at it like me. I don't think they're looking at it like, Albany, that's my brother. I want him to be able to play on week 0. I don't think that that is the mindset because it's way more competitive. For me, I'm going to eat. That's just how I feel. I'm going to eat regardless. Now, in the MEAC-SWAC challenge, the more FCS schools that play on week 0, the more options you have. And I'm not necessarily saying that HBCUs drop to the bottom of the barrel or that HBCUs all of a sudden get no looks. I just think that you're going to lose some people. It's just like the Celebration Bowl conversation. If more teams play on week 0, you'll still have the HBCU base. You'll still have you'll have the 2 teams who are playing, and then you have all the other HBCUs. Their fans will tune in to the MEAC-SWAC challenge. So you'll have that core audience. But I don't think that you're getting as many non-HBCU fans. And here's where it differs from the Celebration Bowl. With the Celebration Bowl, I always said you're going to have the upper hand because you have stakes. You see the Rudy Poo, the gold bracket bowl. No one cares what's going on in the gold bracket bowl. It means nothing. But the Celebration Bowl is the Black College National Championship. That is something that is way above. The stakes are higher. That's not necessarily the case. We talk about bragging rights for the MEAC-SWAC challenge, but if I'm not in the MEAC or the SWAC, why would I care about bragging rights? So that's the negative aspect of it, is that if the FCS approves and they say, yeah, we're going to have everybody can play 12 games. Because last year, who was it in that game? Norfolk State, they played 12 games. Norfolk State played 12 games last year because they could. They played week 0, and they took advantage of what was offered to them. Right now, only HBCUs that are in the MEAC-SWAC challenge, and I think Delaware State actually played Hawaii on week 0, but very few outside of the MEAC-SWAC challenge are taking advantage of the 12th game. So I don't think that they're just going to go out and say, oh, we can play a 12th game now. No, this is what they do. The MEAC-SWAC challenge is the beginning of the HBCU season, and it is an isolated game nationally. If they change the rules to where more people get involved, I still believe that it'll be an isolated game just within the HBCU sphere. And that is completely different. I'm hoping that this doesn't happen. But if it does, what's the good part of it? Because like I said, there's good and bad here. There's positive and negative impact. And we've looked at the negative impact that I think is way more pertinent. I think it's way more relevant to what's going to actually happen. But the good side is you could use this game to schedule somebody else. Everybody can play 12 now. I've always had this gripe with SWAC schools particularly. I think that the MEAC uses their out-of-conference schedule beautifully. But the SWAC for me, I've always wanted them to schedule FCS opponents who are top tier or in other conferences. So often you'll schedule a D2 team. You'll get a couple of money games. Bragging rights and respectability and how people view you, it doesn't mean anything in the long run here. I get it. So it doesn't matter. And you don't have to prove anything to anybody. But at the same time, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't want to see what North Carolina Central does happen with some schools in the SWAC, specifically Texas Southern. Now, I know that TSU has not been on that degree, so don't let that devalue my point. But the point is, Jackson State could do it. FAMU could do it in their time. I would like to see Alabama State go compete against a team that is a middle to slightly upper tier FCS school or in a conference. Like I would like that. I think those things are good. I think those things are beneficial. And when I hear the way that HBCUs are talked to as if they're less than athletically, and not talking academically, but just athletically, when I hear that, I be want to shut people up. And the best way to shut people up is to go play those types of schools. Because you can say what you want to say about HBCUs. You can't talk that crap about North Carolina Central, because I've seen them go out and I've seen them go beat teams. I've seen them beat teams in the CAA. And that's a conference that gets a lot of love. I've seen that happen yearly. It's different. The other thing is, if you do want to go the route that you normally do, you can get another money game. So now if you can go to 12 games as an HBCU, you get an additional money game if that's what you prefer. I would prefer you go the FCS route and be competitive. But if you want to just get the bank up, I understand. Go schedule an LSU. Go schedule an Auburn. Go schedule I'm trying to think about schools that are a little bit closer. Go schedule a Clemson. Like, you can do that now. A Miami, a South Florida, if you want to go the G5 route. You can do those things. And now you have a little bit more freedom. You have more opportunities. So that's what I would say. This is a very big risk reward here for HBCUs. But if the FCS scheduling does end up changing, on a positive note, it's room for bigger opportunities. On a negative note, you may have your visibility lessened by a small degree. Now, as he pushed forward, speaking of visibility, Shannon Harris has been on the front lines. Well, technically, he's been on the sidelines, I guess. But either way, I think he's ready to lead his team in the war on a permanent basis, and that could hurt Tennessee State. Let's break it all down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals are on the way. Woo! I'm hoping for Minnesota to bounce back. I heard somebody right off the Timberwolves. If you feel that way, go ahead and put some money down on Oklahoma City. If you feel like the Thunder are about to run away with this series and it's just going to get ugly very soon after one game, go ahead and put some money down on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Maybe you feel like me and you think that Minnesota can bounce back. If it happens in game 2, put your money down on the Timberwolves. Or maybe you want to go to a same game parlay. I didn't believe in the last one. It was 6 legs, but this one could be a little bit better. Could be a tad bit friendlier to you. Excuse me. Baseball. It's all here. You pick your sport. You go to FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet on something that's simple, something that's easy. Pick a big spread. Put $5 down. You win. You get $200 in bonus bets, and then you can get a little risky. This ain't Monarch Money, but I'm teaching you how to handle your money. All right? Go to FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com, and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft. I love what my guy Damian Parsons is doing, already hyping up the scouting of the 2026 class. We tried to do something similar here. Go listen to that with some of the more guys who are going to be first round, second round, third round picks. Now, I want to keep talking about Shannon Harris. Shannon Harris is a guy who currently is meant to be on the Tennessee State staff. Let's rewind. Let's run it back. The DC Defenders were led by Reggie Barlow going into the season until I think like a week before the UFL season was supposed to begin. Reggie Barlow was the head coach of the DC Defenders. He's been very successful. We probably know him depending on how old you are. You may know him from Virginia State. You may know him from Alabama State. Me personally, I knew him from Virginia State. But there's people who are going to be younger than me who will know him from Tennessee State, because a week before the season began, Tennessee State made a splash. Tennessee State said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and hire Reggie Barlow. I understand that he is he's a UFL professional head coach, but that doesn't matter to us. To us, he's a guy that we want. Hey, you want us? He said yes. And now we're here. That's what I'm saying. So Reggie Barlow leaves. He brings over a good amount of his staff. Greg Williams is coming. Fred Case is coming. Shannon Harris is coming. Everybody is joining Reggie Barlow in Tennessee State. That is the plan. But plans change. because Greg Williams left quickly. He got up out of there. Shortly into the season, Greg Williams says, you know what? This is cool, but I'm gonna go ahead and go to Tennessee State. And I love that because it allows them to really step into the defense. It allows them to really practice during the spring season. They didn't have the traditional spring season because things happened so late, but they did have a bunch of meetings. So you have a lot of textbook, you have a lot of learning in the classroom, not necessarily through doing. Cool. Greg Williams allows you to be there and get a firsthand installation from the guy you're going to be learning from all season long. The other guys are Fred Case and Shannon Harris. They stay at Tennessee State, or excuse me, they stay with the DC Defenders, but they will join Tennessee State. In the words of Reggie Barlow, or excuse me, in the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. Shannon Harris was promoted to interim head coach after the departure of Reggie Barlow. I said this when it first happened. When Shannon Harris became the interim head coach for the DC Defenders, I said, listen, Tennessee State, I understand he's supposed to join your staff, but there is a chance that he ends up being the permanent head coach. And I don't think that he would turn down that job to be your OC. I now, about 2 months later, I'm willing to take it a step farther and say, I believe he will and should be offered the DC Defenders job. In his interim season, they've done really well. And they're the first XFL conference, because they have two conferences, right? So they're the first team in the XFL conference to lock down the playoff spot. The Battlehawks came and did that too, but DC was the first one to do it. Let's go through some of the things that the DC Defenders have done in this first year under under Shannon Harris. So first and foremost, you kick off the year going against the defending champions in the Birmingham Stallions. And when it comes to the Stallions, yes, you have a team that is the defending champion, but you have to think about this. Every year is different. Every year is different when you're talking about a team. So you don't want to just say, oh, they're the champions, so whatever. Cool. You knock off the defending champions in week 1. Everybody's looking at that because we don't know who they are yet, but we know who they were. So we're going to go ahead and give you some credit. What have the Stallions done since? The Stallions are 5-3, which provides them with technically the 4th best record, 2nd best in their conference, but everybody else is 6-2. So I just want to be very clear. This is where you are. You are beating you beat a team that is 2nd in their conference as we stand here today through 8 weeks. You beat a team that was the defending champion. You beat a team that is still a contender. So that first victory was not a fluke. It was not a fluke. It was not you didn't really beat anybody. I hope that makes sense. I think I kind of got off base there. But the point is, you beat the defending champions in week 1, and everybody's going to praise that. As we sit here 7 weeks later, it is still an impressive victory. That is the way that I should say that. Okay, cool. That's how you kick off the season. Now you're 6-2. You're number 1 in your UFL or in your XFL conference, tied with the Battlehawks, who you beat. You beat a contender who is 6-2. You beaten a defender or a contender that is 5-3. Then let me see who the 2 losses were too, because I guess that matters. You lost to the Brahmas. Don't love that. That's a 1-2 team. And he lost to the Panthers, who are 4-2 at that time. And I think the Panthers are currently the top team, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're also a 6-2 team. Yeah, they're now 6-2 as well. So as you're talking about the top 4 teams in this conference, which it really looks like there's a top 4 as far as record goes, you're 2-1 against the other 3. That's what Shannon Harris is doing in his first year. Shannon Harris is pulling off big-time victories. Shannon Harris is, in my opinion, ingratiating himself media-wise. I do love what he's been doing. Shannon Harris is being a contender. He's making it to the playoffs already. What do you want from Shannon Harris that he isn't providing you? He beat the Stallions week 1. That was the defending champions. That was a splash. As an interim head coach, we're not expecting that from you. He carries that over, and he's been 6-2 in the regular season through 8 games. He clinches a playoff spot. He faces the 3 other contenders, and he has a winning record against them with a 2-1 record against those 3 teams. I'm telling you, I ain't gonna say I predicted this, but I knew this was real. And as we stand here through 2 months, we haven't made it to the playoffs, but it's reasonable to say that the DC Defenders could make some noise in the playoffs. How much do they have to do before the DC Defenders offer Shannon Harris the job? Now, the next question becomes, does Shannon Harris keep the job? Well, it's team success. You can't just base it off of that. Okay, I hear you. What about Jordan Ta'amu? Most passing yards, most passing touchdowns. The team leads the league in passing yards per game. They lead the league in total yards per game. That's a sign of offensive progression. Shannon Harris is an offensive guy. I really do think that we have to look at Shannon Harris getting this job as the most likely outcome at this point, because for me, it is. Shannon Harris is supposed. Shannon Harris is supposed. Shannon Harris is supposed to get the Tennessee State job. Excuse me, guys. I try to make fun of myself and I end up stumbling some more. But Shannon Harris is supposed to get the Tennessee State job as a co-offensive coordinator along with Fred Case. I think what they're doing together with the DC Defenders, you add in the fact that Harris is currently the interim head coach. Why would he not get the job? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I need to know. Why would he not get the job? I expect him to be offered to him. The only question is, does he take it? That's cool for Tennessee State because you still get Fred Case. So though you're not going to get Harris, who has been at Tennessee State before, you are going to get another return in Fred Case, and that should help with the offense. So I don't think that it's really something that's going to hurt you, but it is something that I am expecting. Now, as you push forward, let's talk about Grambling, because Grambling just pulled in a safety from LSU, but I don't care where he came from. What I'm expecting out of him has nothing to do with his prior school. Let's break all of that down a little bit more as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we've broken down a lot today. The idea of a growing FCS schedule could grow the HBCU schedule as well, could hamper some things in the HBCU schedule. But as far as Grambling goes, we talked about the DC Defenders and why Shannon Harris, I think, should get that job. Grambling just got themselves an instant leader. And I know there's not a lot to talk about here when it comes to Quad Wilson, but Quad Wilson comes from LSU. And a lot of people that, when they talk about transfers, when they come from bigger schools, eyes go, ooh, eyes just get big, they get dilated. But here's the thing. I don't care where Quad Wilson came from. Now, maybe that's me because, number one, I'm already this way. I already don't care about where you came from too much. I think your first school kind of tells you a little bit of your ceiling coming out of high school, or how your ceiling was viewed coming out of high school. I know that recruiting isn't always an exact science. It's not always done correctly. But I will say this. Where you go out of high school a lot of times can be used to see how your ceiling was. So if you had a guy who came out of high school and went to LSU, you may feel like, all right, he had a high ceiling. He just wasn't able to reach it around other guys who had this. He comes to Grambling. We're expecting to hit partially up to his high ceiling. We'll take it. Quad Wilson went to McNeese out of high school. He was a 3-star cornerback. Quad Wilson was a guy who could have been recruited and committed to Grambling out of high school. So I think that very productive player. Let me not sound like I'm dismissing him. But the point is, a very productive player that if he would have came into Grambling out of high school, you would have been excited about. I probably would have been more excited than I am today, but you would have been excited about getting a guy like Quad Wilson. It would not have been the reaction as getting Quad Wilson from LSU. So I think it's important to point out exactly who Wilson is and where he comes from. He went to McNeese out of high school. He transferred over to LSU, and it isn't because he was wildly productive at McNeese. His dad, Frank Wilson, was the coach at McNeese, which is probably why he chose to go there in the first place. He may have went somewhere else and things may have been different, but I think he chose to stay with his dad. Then when his dad went to LSU, he followed him to LSU. But all in all, he hasn't played much throughout he's been in college for 4 seasons. He hasn't played that much in those 4 seasons. Played 1 game his first year at McNeese. He played 9 his second year, and in that season, he did get an interception. He had an interception and a pass breakup that season. But he didn't get a lot of production at McNeese. So, I just feel like who he is on the field is such a mystery. I don't know who Quad Wilson on the field is on a collegiate level. I know he's very productive as a corner in high school, but he was playing safety for LSU. So when I'm looking at Quad Wilson, I'm not sitting here thinking about, oh man, he could lock down, or man, he could really help be the umbrella over the top that keeps the rain away. Like I'm not looking at that. I'm not looking at he could be an all SWAC player. I'm not looking at what he can do. I'm thinking about his leadership qualities because he's been around for 5 years. He was here 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, so, or excuse me, 20, 21. So you've been 5 years. He's been in college for 5 years. To me, he's a veteran. To me, he's a guy who can step into a role of being a mentor. But it's not like he can be a mentor and not play. He's going to be a mentor who's also on the field if everything goes right. But if nothing else, I guess that's the way I'm looking at it. If nothing else, Quad Wilson should be a leader. And I look at his dad, Frank Wilson. If you don't know Frank Wilson, in the state of Louisiana, this man is revered. He is beloved for his ability to recruit. He's revered for his ability to be a running backs coach. He is really good, okay? And people love and respect Frank. I expect some of that could have rubbed off. I'm not going to say should have, because I understand it doesn't work that way. But I think that the leadership and the respect that Frank Wilson commands, Quad Wilson could have felt and adopted some of those same tendencies. And I think it would be really easy for him to step in with a group of guys that he is going to be older than. I think he can show them the way. He did this at McNeese. He did this at LSU. He's been around different programs. I think that he could be very beneficial as a mentor and as an instant player who has, I don't know, I don't want to say experience because that doesn't feel right, but he's been around the game on the collegiate level for a long time. So you want him to step in and perform instantly. And if nothing else, he can be a leader. Now, as we move forward on tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about how Norfolk State is really correctly embracing the Michael Vick era as they sell his jerseys and Allen Iverson is in it. I can't wait, guys. We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's episode. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.